Lead for Finance. You can unmute and identify yourself and go ahead and give us opening comments, and we'll go to questions. Thank you. Anybody from Finance present on the call?
Yeah. Chairman Mendez, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Crumbo.
Oh, yes. So Chairman Mendez, Kevin Crumbo, Director of Finance here. Sorry if you couldn't hear me. I know you're very serious about the commitment to a 15-minute time slot, so I'll just take a moment here to get us started, introduce two department leaders that are joining me today, and then we'll get this open for questions. So first, let me just say for directors like me whose offices are here and headquartered in the courthouse, it's a long-standing challenge to manage large staff groups at other locations. Most of the finance functions are located on the Fulton campus, and since I've only been here about 6 months or so, it has been truly a challenge to manage from afar. That's been magnified as the safer at home working arrangements have come around. So first want to say thank you to and introduce and reintroduce to many of the council members. It's been a while. Talia Lomax O'Neill, my predecessor. I cannot thank her enough for taking control of the operations of the finance department while I've been working through a multitude of other issues facing the Metro government. So just truly grateful for her commitment, advice, and just every success we've enjoyed here with her. So she's on the call with us today. We're also joined by Alicia Viravuth, who together with Talia have done most of the heavy lifting on our department budget proposal. I'm thankful again for all of their efforts, and likewise thankful for all of our staff, more than 100 folks who make up this finance department, just have risen to the challenge in these unprecedented times. They are at the heart of Metro's operations every day, doing so much that is often taken for granted. They process thousands of payroll transactions and vendor payments every month. They audit grants and other programs to ensure accountability to our taxpayers, and they just do so much more, like preparing and managing the complex Metro budget that's before the council at this moment. Nothing is perfect. The challenges certainly are endless, but our department includes cutbacks and changes like most other departments are facing in this budget cycle. We're hopeful that those will provide a continuity of service, both internally and externally, during the difficult period here for our community. So it has been, it's going to continue to be our goal to inspire the trust and confidence in prudent fiscal management, beginning right here with our own department. And so with that, I'll stop, and Talia and Alicia will join me to answer questions. And as you did there for the mayor's office, if we run out of time or we don't have some details here at our fingertips, we'll be sure to follow up with the council office and get those to the inquiring council members.
Thanks, Mr. Crumbo. Let me start with one question that if I could ask you to address it briefly. It's about the municipal lending facility from the federal government. There continue to be a lot of conversation about that. And council members, the finance department already has a lot of information on this posted on our Metro Council resources page under one of the links for council inquiries. And so, Mr. Crumbo, I don't think need to go into the full details, but the Cliff Notes version about finance's position about the municipal lending facility not being helpful for the operating budget. If you could explain that briefly, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, so the MLF, or Municipal Lending Fund, similar to the CARES Act, it was issued, I think, with great intentions from Congress. The original version a few weeks back now required that a populace larger than what we have here in any Tennessee city or county would be the only ones eligible for that. There was a bit of outcry and pushback, if you will, from cities around the country to lower that populace level. That has since happened and some additional guidelines issued. We received those on Monday, and we have read everything that's available. We've conferred with our outside financial advisor, and really, to your point on the Cliff Notes version, we simply just are not eligible for that program as we understand those guidelines today. There is required there a certification that you cannot receive, credit other places in the market. Nashville's not really in that position. We do have credit today. In fact, Moody's has just, rated us again in investment grade. I'm expecting something similar from Standard & Poor's here shortly, although I'm expecting the outlook from both of those agencies may decline if we're not successful in this budget process. So that's really the Cliff Note version in terms of what that's set up to do. If we dig a little deeper into it, move beyond Cliff Notes and get into interest rates, it's a rather complex structure that's been set up there, but it says in the guidelines that those rates are meant to be punitive and really discourage use of the MLF unless you're just using that as a lender of last resort.
All right, thank you. And beyond that, everybody, I would refer you to the materials on the Metro Council resources page. Mr. Glover is first in line. Councilman?
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, Director Crumbo, thank you very much for being here today, and I look forward to hearing the answer you have. I'm glad to hear you bring up the credit rating piece. I think what they're looking for is the overall comprehension, and correct me if I'm wrong, overall comprehension of understanding where the dollars come from and how we actually make the budget balance. That's a pretty simple yes or no. Is that correct or not?
It is correct, but there's much more to it than that. I think those rating agencies are looking for the same things you see other places in terms of our not only our stability today, but our sustainability for the future in order to pay the debts that they're essentially rating.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my final question, Chair, is simply this. Should we approach the budget with equity? In other words, what I'm saying is same adjustments that are being required in the private business and industry throughout Nashville right now. Do you think that we as the government should take on the same issues that we are having our private businesses have to face with regards to how they're cutting costs?
Sure. And Councilman Glover, is that question to me as the director? You said the chair. Did you mean?
It's to you or whomever in the finance department. I mean, it really kind of boils down to, do you feel like we should approach it the same way that businesses are having to approach their budgets right now?
So I think we should approach it in a similar way. I mean, a government is certainly distinguished from businesses in terms of the services we provide to the public. Our responsibility here to the public is to provide for their safety, whether that's through the health, the economic safety, and things that would otherwise fit that category. And so I think most everyone, looking at this hearing today knows that my background before the Metro government is 30-plus years in corporate restructuring. So taking a lot of those concepts, looking at our Metro government in the face of the economic downturn we have today is certainly applying a lot of those concepts, but, being very, very mindful that a government performs quite a bit different function than what a corporation does in terms of serving the community.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director, for all your work.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Droffel.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and Mr. Crumble, thanks for all what you're doing here. Question, how did you determine projected real estate taxes for new development?
Councilman Drew on that?
Let me restate that. So we have continued new development in the city from commercial and residential. And as I look on planning, they're anticipating 2,000 land development cases to be reviewed. So it doesn't look like they're slowing down. How are we anticipating or projecting the new real estate property taxes from this new development? Is that, how did you do that for the budget?
Yeah, so at least for this moment, we've had some consultation with the assessor's office in terms of their projections, and really that's what you'll see reflected here. As I'm sure you know, there's not a reassessment here for many months to come, so at this moment we're really looking at the rate as opposed to any readjustment for the underlying base that it's multiplied to.
And so new projects, new development that will be coming online for the next year or two, does this budget account for those new taxes for new projects?
So those would just account for the value that we know of today. I think that the details of that, I don't want to get in front of the assessor's office in the direction they may head. So I think that's really a question for them in terms of what they forecast for this year and the years ahead.
Mr. Druffel, Mr. Crumbo, if I may interject with a suggestion, and Councilman, tell me if I'm wrong, but I interpret the question as you looking for more visibility about how finance is projecting the quote-unquote organic growth of the city for the next year. And if I'm, well, first of all, let me ask, is that the thrust of the question?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to get to.
All right, and then what I would suggest, in the interest of time, is that Mr. Cooper can have Ms. Calder direct that question, because I think that's fair. There is a certain amount of organic growth built into the budget, and it's, as you might imagine, not science how they do that, but there's a basic methodology that finance could describe, and we could get that on the website for everybody. Does that work?
No, that's great. I get this question quite a bit from constituents looking at the growth and asking how much of that growth and the property tax corresponding to that values with the new property tax or new revenue that we have. Thank you.
No problem. And the Cliff Note, the short version is that they've got a methodology that I don't pretend to know in detail that they're used to doing year in and year out. It's aimed to, because they're financial forecasters, to be conservative. And a lot of times when at the end of the year, a normal year, revenue comes in a bit better than projections, that's a result of them having been a bit conservative. But realistically, after the current year, anything that comes online, then you know it for sure. But they can do a better job than I just did of describing the basic methodology that they use to project the organic growth.
Yeah, and Chairman Mendez, Director, I think I understand the question better, and you're right. We'd be glad to follow up there in writing. I thought we were starting to bleed over into things that are really in the purview of the assessor's office, but I can say what information we use from that office and elsewhere then to put in the incremental growth that you just described. So thank you, Councilman Druffel, for your question. I'm sorry I didn't understand it at first.
No, thanks, Mr. Mendez, for helping me. But,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Chair. I have about 4 questions, but I'll just have 2. What I wanted to find out is that as the budget is progressing, as we're looking at things, there is a possibility that we may not be able to follow through on some of our capital projects. But we've gone ahead and have bonds set up for some of these, for financing of these projects. So the question is, have we looked into the possibility of an advance refunding of some of the debt, especially if we know that we may not use them, that way we're not paying on a debt that we may not fully utilize? Is that something that's been looked at, and do we know if there's a possible saving or anything from that?
Council Lady, I'm sorry you were a little difficult for me to hear on the call. Perhaps Councilman Mendez, could you repeat the question for me?
Unfortunately, the sound in the chamber is worse than the sound on the call. Councilmember Suara, you want to repeat that, please?
Yes. So the question is that we've had some advanced financing for some capital projects that we intend to embark on in the upcoming year. But we know that with funding and what's going on, we may not do those capital projects. So is there any way to have an advanced refunding of some of those loans or some of those debt so that we're not paying on them? Have we looked at it to see, do we have much more debt than the project that we have planned? And if we do, if we're going to cut down some of those projects, does any of our funding or our debt allow us to refund so we can save on payments? That's the question.
Yeah, so we don't really have a refunding mechanism that we would look to in the instance of capital projects that we're not going to undertake, but rather we will really issue that debt as we go in the form of commercial paper, and then we would convert that to bonds sometime later in the fiscal year. So I think your question is asking if we borrowed money already that we haven't deployed into capital projects, and the answer to that is generally no.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Suara, if you've got additional questions, go ahead and type them into the Q&A function. And Mr. Crumbo and your whole staff, we know you guys are burning the midnight oil for months now, trying to deal with the tornado, with the virus, a million unknowns, and getting the budget done. And want to thank all of you for all your hard work for the city.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.